In episode 6, I had discussed the first set of verses that influenced my interpretation of the Gita. You may recall my saying that the Bhagavad Gita asserts that God isn't like an accountant tracking your good and bad deeds. The idea that committing wrong deeds leads one directly to punishment in hell or good deeds lead one to heaven isn't what is said in the Gita. Additionally, God mentions that anyone who prays Him, even those considered bad or evil, can still realize Him. Therefore, worldly actions, both good and bad, don't impact your relationship with God. Whoever strives in the right earnest attains eternal peace or Shashwat Shanti. And the realization of God is the attainment of such a state of eternal bliss or happiness, the eternal bliss that one can see in the serene expressions of figures like Guru Nanak and Gautam Buddha. Even a small attainment of this peace is meaningful. I also highlighted the same concept shared by Adi Shankar, encapsulated in the phrase Chidananda Rupa Shivoham Shivoham, which means my form is eternal bliss, I am Shiv, I am Shiv. Today, I'll delve into the second set of verses that influence my interpretation or smriti. The second set has two verses, 3.3 and 13.24. In the previous episode, I mentioned that worshipping God leads to salvation. However, does this mean that we should all fold our hands and pray? This notion seems incongruous, especially given the context of God's message to Arjuna, which is on a battlefield. Thus, I aim to clarify the essence of prayer or worshipping. These two verses, 3.3 and 13.24, significantly shape my understanding of prayer or worshipping truly means and how it connects with us attaining a state of eternal peace and bliss. Let's begin with verse 3.3. Shri Bhagwan Uvach, Loke asmin dvividha nishtha pura prokta maya anag gyan yogen sankhyana karma yogen yogina. God addresses Arjuna, referring to him as Anag, or someone who's free from sin. He says, I have previously shared two paths with honesty and conviction. Gyan Yoga, which is for the knowledge seekers, and Karma Yoga, which is for the yogis. Gyan Yoga involves gaining knowledge and insight, while Karma Yoga centers around doing the right action. The essence of praying or worshipping is therefore either pursuing Gyan Yoga or the path of knowledge, or Karma Yoga, which is the path of right action, and you attain God and become one with Him through either of these paths. On verse 3.3, Paramahansa Yogananda's perspective is important to note. According to him, within the practice of Karma Yoga are included various types of actions. However, meditation is the most elevated form of action within Karma Yoga. Paramahansa Yogananda asserts that if you are engaging in Karma Yoga through meditation, you are embracing the highest form of action. He suggests that meditation holds a special place in Karma Yoga. However, my viewpoint is different from his interpretation. I think his interpretation is one of an ascetic. While I acknowledge the significance of meditation within Karma Yoga, I see Karma Yoga as a broader path that encompasses a range of actions beyond just meditation. I believe that while meditation is indeed an integral part of Karma Yoga itself encompasses a wider array of actions. This view becomes clearer when we explore chapter 13, verse 24. This verse is, Dhyanen atmani pashyanti kechit atmanam atmana anya sankhyogen karma yogen cha apre. Here, God says that some look at self through the self by focusing on the self. Or in other words, they focus on me or meditate on me and become one with me through that. There are others who do so, that is, become one with me by gaining knowledge. And then there are others who attain so through the path of right action. Here God is using three words distinctly: dhyana, which is meditation; sankhya, which is knowledge; and karma, which is right action. That's why when I read verses 3.3 and 13.24 together, it becomes clear that there are three different ways to reach God. One of these ways is through gaining knowledge, Sankhya Yoga or Jnana Yoga. The second involves dhyana or meditation. And the third one is the path of Karma Yoga, which is the path of right action. It is important to note that the path of right action is separate and unique. and not necessarily merged with meditation. Now let's talk about worshipping. What exactly is worshipping? This worshipping involves doing the right action, gaining knowledge, or meditating. There has never been any doubt about the path of dhyana or meditation. We've heard multiple stories of sages and ascetics who've attained God through the path of dhyana. So there are different ways to connect with God, and meditation clearly is one, but gaining knowledge and doing the right action are also distinct and clearly explained ways to attain God. This is important for me because I am trying to figure out my way to God through the paths of action and knowledge, not through meditation. Here's another point to remember. God always emphasizes the importance of combining knowledge with action and action with knowledge. This balance is what yoga means, something that is yukt or harmonious or well-rounded or joined. As I've mentioned earlier, Karma Yoga refers to right action, which is action done with perseverance, with principles, and with rational discrimination or judgment. When we go to chapter 2, and especially when we discuss chapter 3, it's all about Karma Yoga or the path of right action. There's something else I want to mention. The word devotion doesn't appear anywhere. Instead, the Gita is talking about 2 ways to connect with God, or 3 ways: the path of knowledge, Jnana Yoga, the path of right action, Karma Yoga, and the path of meditation, which is Dhyana Yoga. And these are all different from each other. But there is no mention of devotion or belief. Paramahansa Yogananda says that belief is essential. You need to be a believer, because if you don't believe at all, it's tough to follow any of these paths. However, you cannot connect with God solely through devotion and belief. You also need knowledge or Jnana Yoga and do the right things, Karma Yoga, or meditate, do Dhyana Yoga. This isn't unreasonable. In medical science, there's a term called psychosomatic, which means if you believe in medicine or the doctor, it can have a positive effect on your recovery and your health. For people dealing with serious illnesses, doctors often say that believing in your inner strength to fight, believing in the medicine, believing in the doctor are crucial. So belief is a necessary condition, but not a sufficient condition. Without belief, it's hard to follow unhindered on any of the paths, Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga, or Dhyana Yoga. Lastly, I'd like to add, we all know many people who have felt or experienced the presence of God through meditation. There are also those who have felt the same through right action. Take Kabir Das, for instance. He was a weaver, spinning yarn, yet he could feel a connection with God. And in his spiritual journey, his sayings are some of the most profound and heart-hitting. They're all substance and no fluff. And by the way, who has realized God more than Arjuna? After all, God sang the Bhagavad Gita for him. Unlike others, Arjuna truly saw the cosmic form, even without extensive meditation. Arjuna was a warrior and didn't spend time in meditation. His path was his work, his action. Yet he felt God's presence in a way that others did not. Something fascinating I discovered while reading the Bhagavad Gita is when God describes himself between chapters 7 and 10. Before revealing his cosmic form, Vishwaru, God tells Arjuna to comprehend rather than simply know him. God says, I am like the Himalayas among mountains, the sacred sound Om in the Vedas, the sage Narad among the wise. I am like the majestic elephant Airavat amongst elephants. In essence, God presents himself as the ultimate, the absolute, the best of the best of the best. He also mentions, among the Pandavas, I am Arjuna. This emphasizes that Arjuna, a Karma Yogi, uniquely grasped the essence of God. It's hard to find a better example than this. These insights have shaped my understanding, showing me that Karma Yoga is a distinct path to attain God and become one with Him. And the form of this attainment is a state of eternal bliss or eternal peace, Shashwat Shanti. Karma Yoga is therefore an important approach. So these verses influence my interpretation of the Gita. It is important to realize that the essence of Gita cannot be understood without an interpretation. And there are many interpretations out there. My interpretation or Smriti is influenced or guided by these sets of verses that we are covering before delving into chapter 2. Thank you.